Our final presentation for this breakout will be Alan Berthold. He's a scientist with the Texas Water Resources, and he's going to be talking to us about some work they've had in the Rio Grande Basin areas.
Well, thank you all for having me, and thank you for asking me to talk about this project that we have going on. It's funded through the USDA NIFA program. It was one of their water challenge area grants, and it's titled Diversifying the Water Portfolio for Ag, which is what we were looking at trying to do. Before I jump directly into it, I wanted to just give you an idea of who we are. So I work for the Texas Water Resources Institute. We were established by the Water Resources Research Act in 1964 to address water issues across the state and beyond. We're administered under the Texas A&M AgriLife Research, but we're also a part of AgriLife Extension Service and the College of Ag and Life Sciences. Most of our projects fall into three different focus areas. One is restoring and protecting, so we have a variety of water quality related projects. This one in particular falls under sustaining and enhancing. And then we have a variety of education programs that fall under engaging and educating. We also offer some funding for student scholarships, graduate student scholarships through our USDA and Mills scholarship, and we administer the water technology seed grants that some of you may have been involved in the past. We have a very good communications team, so if you've ever seen any of these different magazines, they're stellar. I mean, they do a fantastic job, so all the credit goes to them for these, but this is a publication that comes out of our office as well. So for our project, our goals were looking at the Rio Grande. It's a 1,900-mile river. It's the fourth longest river in the United States. And really it can be broken into two different systems. If you look at it from kind of the headwaters down to Presidio, and then from Presidio down to the Gulf of Mexico. The headwaters is fed by a snowpack, and then the lower part of the Rio Grande is fed by some of the monsoons, and the primary tributary is the Rio Conchos coming out of Mexico. It is a rapidly growing watershed as far as population goes. It's anticipated that the population will double over the course of the next 50 years, but it's also home to a very diverse group of crops, I guess. In the upper part of the basin, you find a lot of primarily pecans, alfalfa, cotton. There are some dairy farms up there. And then down in the lower valley, you find quite a bit of corn, cotton, grain sorghum, citrus, sugarcane, and a variety of other specialty crops. So to address some of the issues that are going on in the basin as a whole, we made our long-term goal to understand just how all of the uses of water can be optimized and have the greatest economic return for society. So to accomplish that, our short-term goals were to understand the impacts of the changing climate, and I'll explain some of this a little bit further on, or a little bit later. Demonstrate the appropriate use of saline and reclaimed water. Develop demonstration tools for producers, and then identify the most economically efficient use for the different water types. So for those goals, we have five different objectives. The first objective is how much water is available. So we're going to, and for each of these, I'll give a little bit broader overview, the status of each. We're currently in our third year of the project, starting our fourth year, and then I'll address the next steps. But the first one is how much water is available. So looking at some of the some of the hydrologic models that are available, how can we quantify what water there currently is? Objective 2 is we call it our salinity group. So how can we use alternative sources of water? Objective 3 is how can we use that water a little bit more efficiently? Fourth is our economic groups. So what water could be used and where to maximize benefit. And then lastly is our outreach and engagement objectives. So what stakeholders need to be engaged to make some of these decisions so that what we're doing is useful. So starting out with the first objective of how much water is available, it's quite a modeling exercise to model the surface water at least and some of the groundwater for this entire system. As you know, models do allow you to play some of those if-then scenarios. So for this objective, Dr. Srinivasan is the objective lead, and he specializes in SWAT modeling. So we have developed a SWAT model for the majority of this basin. But what this does is it gives us a platform to identify both the quantity and the quality of the water supplies in the basin and how we might be able to meet some of the demands for urban and ag into the future. Right now, they've got a calibrated model. So a lot of these, I'm a part of a couple of these objectives. So a lot of these slides I'm presenting for the rest of our team. So if there are any specific questions, I'd be happy to facilitate that question and ask that team member. But the status for this objective right now is they've got currently a developed or calibrated model. They're anticipating using some of the climate change modeling and reporting that there will be overall a decrease in rainfall. They're saying that a decrease in rainfall doesn't necessarily result in a decrease in overall stream flow, because a lot more of that rainfall is going to fall during the winter months, which is going to lead to less snowpack. So we'll have less stream flow in the summer, but more in the winter. Due to increasing temperatures from some of the climate models, there'll be an increase in evapotranspiration. So overall, we can expect a decrease in rainfall, increased temperature, decreased snowfall, and increased potential evapotranspiration. So kind of a worst case scenario, if you will. The next steps for this particular model is to assess the water demands and the river inflows under different climate change scenarios, and how might that impact the overall supply. So that gets into some of these supply and demand scenarios for the different sectors that we can take a look at. We're going to evaluate some of the land use changes. So some local stakeholders in the El Paso region have talked about, because of the population growth, they've seen an intensification in agriculture. So more grown on a smaller parcel than what they've seen in the past. And later on in September, we're going to meet with another group that is out of the University of Texas, El Paso. They also have a USDA NIFA funded project that are looking at some similar models and some similar what if scenarios. So we're going to try to, I guess, join forces with them and see if we can come up with similar results, repeatable results, and come up with some good scenarios for folks to use in the future. Our second objective kind of has two primary sub-objectives, I guess. The first is to assess a diversified cropping system, and the second one is to evaluate soil and crop management practices as it relates to alternative water supplies. So some of the experimental examples, I guess, that I can give you is we're working with a team of folks in El Paso, in Artesia, New Mexico, and in Weslaco. And at those three different sites, we've chosen different cultivars for crops, such as energy sorghum, canola, and some others. Cotton is being grown, and both in the field and in the greenhouse in Pecans and in Lubbock. And those are, for cotton, there's some traditional plant breeding for more salt tolerant varieties. The alternative waters that we're irrigating with are municipal wastewater and then brackish groundwater. And then for some of the crop management practices, there's an attempt to look at different amendments such as gypsum, sulfur, and polymer. So right now, for the diversified cropping systems, we've selected three of the best cultivars, and surprisingly, quinoa has shown some fairly promising results. We've looked at energy sorghum, switchgrass, pecans, canola, and again, cotton. Those have gone from the greenhouse and into the field. Canola has given some really good results and has proven to be a fairly salt-tolerant crop. I want to back up to quinoa. Quinoa is a crop that cannot handle the heat well. So right now in El Paso, we're taking a look to see if that can be grown and take some of the summer heat in that area. We did have one faculty that took a look at pomegranates, but there's not a whole lot of a market out there. So there hasn't been a whole lot of effort in that area lately. Some of the management practices for alternative waters have been using gypsum, but we haven't seen a ton of results in that because of the high caliche in the soil in that area. But there might be some kind of longer term impacts. Really, what it boils down to is it all comes back to crop selection. So for this objective, the next steps are going to be to continue evaluating different cultivars both in the field and in the greenhouse. Continue to evaluate quinoa. Evaluate the longer term impacts of gypsum. So I've mentioned that the shorter impacts, there wasn't a significant difference, but we're going to take a look at the longer term impacts and begin publishing some of these results. I see that I've got about 10 minutes, so I'll try to speed it up a little bit. Our third objective is how can water be used more efficiently? So out in the field, we're trying to provide producers with different irrigation scheduling tools, and specifically taking a look at evapotranspiration. So weather stations are kind of few and far between in some cases, and in other cases they're not very reliable. So how can we do some calculations to calculate ET in between those stations, but also predict into the future as best we can. Not much like a weatherman, of course, but we're trying to refine some of these irrigation scheduling applications. Our partners at New Mexico State are doing a lot of this work using a fixed wing aircraft and some infrared camera technology, flying over different fields and trying in an attempt to develop and improve on the different crop coefficients. We also have a team in Weslaco that's been using drone technology to help in some water management. The status of that, so right now, some of the desktop work that we've done has been to develop a spatio-temporal framework of the weather stations to predict the evapotranspiration. And right now we're in a data collection phase. So we've looked at some of the historical data, and now we're testing some current, future data as well. Some of the other work that's been done, this in Amarillo is looking at yield response as a result of deficit irrigation. And then lastly, our partners in New Mexico, they've got their equipment and everything calibrated for the fixed wing aircraft, but because of the spacing requirements, so you've got to be 6 feet apart or more, because of COVID-19, they're not able to fly the planes, so we're kind of losing an entire field summer for that, or field season. So the next steps are to continue collecting data, continue doing some analysis and assessing the accuracy and efficiency of the crop coefficients, and continue developing some of these drone technologies. Our fourth group, or fourth objective, is, as I mentioned earlier, is our economic objective. So what they're looking at is inventorying some of the costs and methods available for increasing the use of marginal water to supplement freshwater resources, developing crop enterprise budgets, and then developing a modeling system to assess the water use, crop mix, and conveyance choices. And with this, we're able to say, okay, connecting these models with the SWAT model, we're able to say, again, those what if scenarios. Okay, if we were to use more brackish water for municipal use, how much fresher surface water does that free up for agricultural use? And what are the economics behind that? Because brackish groundwater, for example, might be able to be a little bit cheaper on a per person use when you can spread that across a larger population within a city. So this group has been doing quite a bit of work. These, excuse me, their status right now is they built the RIVERSIM model for Texas, and the projects that they've taken into account for future water supplies have been from the state water plan, and they're trying to. There's not a state water plan in New Mexico, so they're working on trying to get some of those projects for New Mexico. But they've taken those different projects and the available water from the SWAT modeling and run that against 12 different climate scenarios that go from extremely wet to extremely dry. More wet climates under El Nino. So from that, they've shown that we can increase inflows in the northern part of the watershed into the Elephant Butte Reservoir by 30% and down to the New Mexico border by about 10%. But under La Nina drier condition, you see about a 10% decrease of inflows. The effects that has on crop yields under some of the El Nino and La Nina phases, you see a 7% to a 9% drop under the La Nina phase. Hay yields don't really seem to change. Cotton yields do have a bit of an impact, and sorghum yields have a little bit less of an impact than both cotton and corn. The next steps for this objective are to finish the New Mexico model. They're going to try and improve some of the analysis. We've visited with the Objective 2 model, the plant breeding, the Objective 2 group, the plant breeding group, and about how brackish water affects some of the different crops, and they're trying to take that into account in the economic model. We're going to improve both the El Nino and La Nina models for Texas, and again expand this work with the regional stakeholders and the input that they can provide. Our fifth objective is engaging stakeholders. So we've got an advisory group made up of water managers, irrigation district managers, both in the lower Rio Grande Valley and the El Paso region. We've got some reservoir managers and other city officials involved, and they've been giving us some of the different scenarios that we've been trying to run. So hopefully the end result from this modeling exercise will be some useful tools that they can then take to make future decisions about the different water management projects. We've also been doing some outreach and education for producers, so that's one of our sub-objectives under this. I've sent out a survey to about 1,500 landowners within the entire Rio Grande Basin in Texas and in New Mexico, and right now I'm getting results back. And the goal of that one is to identify two things. One is barriers to adoption, and then two, what is it that producers use when they're deciding to irrigate, whether it be evapotranspiration or the way a crop looks, and how can we better assist them in coming up with tools to decide when to better irrigate. Right now, our status, as you can imagine, with an outreach and education objective, is paused, but we are trying to come up with a different way of reaching people. So what we've done recently is we've been developing some short, small videos, like 1-minute videos on some of these different topics. We're going to come up with or develop a library of these and then start sharing them through targeted social media posts, as well as through our website and other methods. We engaged our advisory board in July. We had a meeting with them, and they provided some excellent input that we've taken. We're currently working through some of those different scenarios, and we're going to present them back in September. I mentioned the producer survey, and if you remember back to, I think it was my second or third slide about that magazine, we're going to have a magazine come out this fall that's specific to the Rio Grande Basin, not just our project, but University of Texas at El Paso's project and some others. So with this, we're hoping that we can improve the long-term viability of ag within the basin. We're hoping that we can increase the value of food and energy-based ag production, and really, let's see the time, and really just improve overall ag and help producers diversify their water portfolio, and have some other options, because in that area, it's a very, very water stressed area. So with that, are there any questions?
I don't see any on the question tab, but I think that only means you're extremely thorough and did a great job. So that's all I can do.
I think it's time for a break. That's what everybody's saying.
So, well, we appreciate you being here so much, Alan, and thank you for sharing that with us. And I will forward any questions, or the staff will if we have anything come along. Thank you so much.